I remember this girl ended up actually walking up to the teacher's desk, and out of nowhere, she decided to bend over and start smelling his feet as he was grading our tests. I'm not gonna lie, but 100% people in that class and me knew that this girl was obsessed with our teacher. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to another insane but crazy story. Now, today's story all takes place back when I was in my grade 11 year. Now, in grade 11, I was the type of kid to play video games all the time, stay home, but at the same time, go out and once in a while, go meet up with girls and do the devil's tango, since I was a player. But I remember one time in my grade 11 year, I had a class called biology, where basically we learned about the human anatomy and all things life, I guess. But I remember there was one life form in that classroom that was one of the most interesting women ever. And this girl, I'm not gonna lie, at first when I first saw her in my biology class, I thought she was pretty attractive. But with every attractive girl you meet, there's always some sort of crazy in them. Anyways, going on with the story, I remember when I entered inside that classroom for the first time, I ended up seeing her and I thought she was actually really good. So I decided to walk up to her and kind of like introduce myself, but it was very obvious after a while, she really wanted nothing to do with me. It was like I was getting in the way of her basically wanting to learn biology, even though class hasn't even started yet. And I decided to basically leave her alone and sit down. When I sat down in the seat, we ended up seeing the teacher walk in for the first time, and when we saw him, he was actually a pretty decent guy. He wasn't weird, he wasn't ugly, nor was he an old man that basically would tell us tall tales. He was just a genuine dude that just wanted to teach us basic things about biology, which I'm not gonna lie, all of us in the class enjoyed. But one thing I started to realize was that when I looked over at the girl that I tried introducing myself to that was pretty attractive, I started to notice she would stare at the teacher very oddly. Now, I know what you guys are thinking, Bubba, she's probably just learning. Like, what do you mean she's staring at the teacher oddly? And as much as I thought that was the case, I am not gonna lie, even when he wasn't teaching, just sitting down, instead of her head being on the paperwork that we were supposed to do, she would just keep staring at him. It got to the point where I remember the teacher even stood up and noticed that she was staring and would walk up to her and say, I see you looking over at me. Is there anything you need help with? Oh, no, I'm totally fine. I'm just, I was just looking over at you for some reason. I don't know. She started to sound really nervous, but at the same time, I had no idea why. Like, it was just our teacher. If you need help, just ask him. That's why he's there. That's what he's actually paid to do. But I remember the teacher ended up going back to his desk, and that was basically it. Until something insane happened later, where I remember when the bell rang and class was over, we all ended up walking out of the classroom, and as I was walking out, I remember I was behind the girl that was basically the super attractive chick that I thought was really good looking. And I remember as I was walking behind her, I remember I saw her phone was out, and she was searching up the teacher on Facebook. Yeah, don't know what she was doing on the teacher's profile, but that's really weird. Especially like, if you're in high school, like you don't really want to search up your teachers and like, get into their personal lives, because that's not what they're there for. They're there to just answer questions and to tell us things that we're never going to use in the future. But this girl, for some reason, she was doing some like in-depth research on our teacher that was going on, and honestly, it was super, super weird. So as we were walking out, I remember I decided to basically tap her on the shoulder and say, so what do you think of our teacher? Wait, what? Why would you ask me that, Bubba? Because I see you're on his Facebook profile on your phone. Oh, I'm just doing some background checks. I do it with all teachers. Just don't worry about it and don't say anything. I remember that moment she ended up leaving, and I found it very odd. I remember when lunchtime came around, I ended up meeting up with the boys in the school cafeteria, and when we all sat down together, I remember telling them about this like weird chick in our classroom, and a lot of them started to look at me really weird because they thought what this girl was doing kind of seemed pretty stalkerish. Which, to be fair, and girls, if you're listening, which I don't know if you guys are, you guys know that when it comes to figuring out things about people on the internet, you guys are like FBI agents. Like, it's actually kind of crazy how much they find out just by going through our profiles. Anyways, going on with the story, I remember later on that day, I ended up heading towards my locker to go pick up some books for my next class. And as I was walking towards my locker, I remember I ended up seeing the girl going back into the biology classroom for some reason. And when I looked over in the window to see what was going on, I saw she was talking to the teacher once again. Now, I thought maybe she had a question about the homework and stuff, but on the first day, like, really? Do you really want to show that you're that dumb? But then one of the craziest things happened where I ended up seeing her actually reach her arm out and put it on his thigh. And the teacher instantly stood up and was like, I gotta get to a meeting. And when he walked out of the classroom, he ended up seeing me watching, and he looked over at me and said, Bubba, I know what it looked like in there, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I have no idea what's going on with her, but I've got to go report this. I remember the teacher ended up leaving, and right behind him, like 10 seconds later, was the girl. She looked over at me and said, wait, Bubba, what did he say to you? Did he say anything about me? What? No, he just said he'll see me me tomorrow. I didn't really want to say what he was actually doing because, well, it was none of her business. And on top of that, I didn't know what this girl was capable of. And this girl ended up walking away afterwards. I remember the next day of school, when I entered inside my biology class, I was basically prepared for anything. And I really wanted to see what was the update on basically this weird chick and the teacher, because it was fairly obvious that something really odd was going on. And I remember when I sat down, the same thing happened again. This girl would just keep staring at the teacher, being really weird and being her really odd self. It was fairly obvious at that point that this girl was like majorly obsessed. Like, it got to the point where I decided to put 2 and 2 together and think, yeah, this girl is actually crazy. But what she ended up doing next honestly made me really disgusted by her, because I remember what this girl ended up doing was when the teacher was handing out a homework assignment for us to do, as he was walking by the girl that was obsessed with him, she decided to take a photo of our teacher's peach and basically save it on her phone. At that moment, I was super weirded out, and I saw this all go down, and I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if I should call her out on it. I didn't know if I should, you know, basically tell her, hey, yo, that's not cool. Like, I didn't know what to do. And right afterwards, I remember one of the girls that was sitting behind her ended up looking over at me thinking, yo, like, what's going on with this girl? She's so weird. And I couldn't agree more. It got to the point where I was pretty stressed out. But honestly, once again, it was really none of my business, nor do I want to get in trouble for like the first 2 days of me being in this classroom. So I remember a couple minutes went by, and then out of nowhere, I ended up seeing the girl that sat behind the obsessed chick stand up, and she actually went over to the teacher and asked her to talk to him outside. I remember the teacher looks over at the girl and says, yeah, sure, here, lead the way. And this girl and the teacher ended up actually leaving the classroom. At that moment, the girl that was obsessed with the teacher ended up clenching her fists and slamming her desk on the table right as he left the classroom with this girl. And no joke, everyone in the classroom just started staring at each other thinking, what is this girl on? And that's when this girl ended up doing the most craziest thing that took things way too far, because she ended up standing up, going over to the teacher's desk and smelling his seat and smelling his shoes that he had left for PE class, because this teacher was apparently also a PE teacher. We were all super weirded out, and one of the guys in the classroom ended up looking over at her saying, yo, bro, what are you doing over there? I remember the girl started panicking, and she's like, oh, nothing, don't worry about it. And right as she was about to leave the desk, this girl does the most bizarre thing where she actually ended up stealing the teacher's underwear that was in his duffel bag. Yeah, literally stealing the teacher's underwear. Like, I don't know who does that, but I was super grossed out. And I remember everyone else just started looking at each other in the classroom again, thinking, what is this girl on? At this point, I remember the teacher ended up walking back in, looking at all of us look at each other, and was super confused on what was going on, to the point where he walked up in front of the classroom and said, is everything all right in here? What's going on, guys? And I remember the one person to speak up was the girl that was obsessed with him, saying, oh, nothing. I guess they're all like close to finishing the homework. At that moment, we all just stayed silent because once again, it was the second day of biology. We didn't want to say anything weird. And right as the bell rang and we thought all the madness was over, things got even worse. Because I remember later on that school day at lunch, right as I walk up to the boys in the cafeteria, apparently all the boys were sharing a photo around in the school that was apparently a photo of a girl basically beating her, I don't really know what to say, but basically doing the devil's tango with herself in the school public bathroom, and on top of that, sniffing the teacher's underwear. Yeah, I really did not know what to say when everyone saw this video being shared throughout the school. I remember instantly a lot of people were looking around in the school looking for this girl and looking for the person that shared the video in the first place. Honestly, super rude, by the way, super invasive in privacy, which no one should be doing. But honestly, knowing that this girl did this really was bad. It got to the point where actually, funny enough, the teachers and principal got a hold of the video and they figured out who posted it, and that person got expelled. But not only that, the next day when I got to school, I ended up seeing the girl that was obsessed with the teacher, and she was apparently really sad. She was actually crying in the classroom when I entered in my biology class. But when everyone thought she was crying because she got caught in 4K doing that in the bathroom with the teacher's underwear, apparently, and I don't know how she already knew about this, but the teacher for our biology class also got changed into another teacher. And that's apparently the real reason why she was crying. She did not care that she got caught in 4K, and she said it was normal. And funny enough, even to this day now, she actually does OF, which was, yeah, no surprise there. I remember my girlfriend walked up to me and she said to me, Bubba, I think I'm falling for someone else and I don't think this is gonna work. Wait, what? Who's the other guy? I can't say, but if I do, promise you won't say anything? Yeah, I won't say anything. Who's the guy? Bubba, it's our teacher. What? Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba and welcome back to another really weird, but gotta say crazy story. Now, this story all takes place back in my high school year, and this was my grade 12 year. Now, in grade 12, I was dating this girl that I was seeing. It was only for like 4 months, and the reason why it was only for 4 months was kind of insane. But back in my grade 12 year, I remember I ended up joining a class that was called drama. If you guys don't know, I took theater classes back when I was in high school because, well, I'm not gonna lie, I had a really bad stutter back when I was younger. stutter and before I started making content. Hell, even sometimes nowadays, I still stutter, but you guys don't get to see that since it's edited. But going on with the story, I remember I took this drama course to basically learn how to be a good actor and basically learn how to do the basics on how to be a performer. In a way, I thought this could benefit my future somehow, which it did. And honestly, I remember while I was in that class, I saw this girl that was attending our class as well, and she was a really attractive girl. Like, I am not joking. This girl was a definite 10 out of 10, and she had nice cherries. She had a good peach. Like, she was fine AF. And it got to the point where, I'm not gonna lie to you, I had to spit my Riz, especially since this was my grade 12 year and my final year of high school. I thought maybe there was still a chance for me to get a high school sweetheart. If you guys don't know what a high school sweetheart is, it's something that is basically impossible to get, but it's a relationship that you stay in even after high school. So I remember one day during our drama course, me and this girl, we ended up getting partnered for a lot of different scenes together, and she kind of ended up finding out that I liked her to the point where we started dating. And it was very obvious to the class that we started dating, so it was one of those relationships that everyone knew about. Like, I'm not joking, every time I entered inside the classroom for drama, instantly I would have like a girl walk up to me saying, "Oh, hey Bubba, your girlfriend's just over there in the change rooms." And I would always be known as her boyfriend, and she was always known as my girlfriend. But let's just say all that ended up changing when a guy ended up walking into the classroom. And no, this guy was not a student, it was a teacher. There was a teacher that ended up entering inside our classroom, and he was a teacher that was very, very young. Like, I am not joking, I was like 18 around this time, and so was my girlfriend. But the teacher, I want to say, was like maybe like 23, 24 years old. Like, he was a pretty young guy. And I remember he ended up coming in front of the classroom saying, "All right, drama, let's get this started. Everyone, let's get in a circle. Let's all introduce ourselves. I'm your new teacher, and let's see what's going on here." In a way, this guy actually seemed pretty cool at first, and a lot of people in the classroom were excited to have a new teacher. But then right away, when we started like basically introducing ourselves, he would always say like a really weird comment afterwards. Like, for example, when I introduced myself, I ended up saying, "Hi, my name's Bubba. I play video games, and yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna be when I get older." Did you just say your name's Bubba? That's funny, dude. It's like your stutter. Bubba. I'm not gonna lie, him making fun of my stutter wasn't cool, but at the same time, the class started laughing because they also knew me for my stutter. That my girlfriend at the time actually thought I was cute, but you know, it is what it is. But then when my girlfriend introduced herself, since she was right next to me, right after she said her name and what she wanted to be in the future, the teacher ended up saying, "Oh wow, so you are as beautiful as your name." Like, what? Did you just flirt with my girlfriend and you're the teacher? In a way, I got kind of weirded out, but she started blushing, and in a way, I started to see some tension that was like definitely in the room at that moment. And sadly, I did not have a knife to cut it because I didn't want to stutter interrupting it. So in a way, I kind of just decided to play it off and pretend that nothing happened. But let's just say things ended up getting a lot worse, because as the days would go on, every time like he was showing us an example, he would always choose my girlfriend to help with the example. And it got really weird because they would always like do like hand holding or dancing together, and it made me really uncomfortable with how much he was doing with my girl. But obviously in my mind, I was thinking, you know what, he's a teacher, maybe, you know, there's nothing bad coming of it. But as it kept going on, there was a day where me and my girlfriend, we went on a date together, and I decided to kind of bring up the fact that the teacher was getting way too close to her, and she ended up saying, "Bubba, what are you saying? He's the teacher. Nothing's gonna happen. He just thinks I'm a really good student, and maybe you're just jealous because he prefers me more than you." At that moment, she tried to make it more of a jealousy thing instead of like an actual just common concern that I had, but she didn't care. She just wanted me to just let her do her thing, and I decided to just let it go. And by let it go, I don't mean dump her. I mean just ignore the fact that this teacher was being really, really weird. I remember around 2 weeks went by, and obviously as time went on, she started to be more distant. She wouldn't answer my calls, and my girlfriend was just basically not being my girlfriend anymore. It even got to the point where when I entered the classroom, she would always be more around the teacher than me. Obviously, I got more upset, and every time I was around my girlfriend, she would kind of just ignore me and pretend I wasn't there. Don't get me wrong, it definitely did suck, but at the same time, I had a lot more things to worry about because it was my grade 12 year, so I didn't think too much of it. Until one day, I remember I was basically getting ready to go home, and after I finished up getting things out of my locker, I ended up passing by the drama classroom, and I ended up seeing my girlfriend with the teacher alone in the classroom. Now, I felt really weird about this, and I didn't know if I should walk in, but right as I was about to walk in, thinking, you know what, maybe I should see what she's doing, right away, I ended up seeing the teacher standing up and pulling her in by her waist. Now, this moment, I'm like, whoa, okay, this is not cool. So I walked in there saying, "Hey, like, what's going on in here?" "Oh, hey, Bubba, I was just showing a dance move to, you know, my student here. What's going on?" "Oh, nothing. I was just gonna ask my girlfriend a question if that's cool. I remember my teacher kind of like had like this like snarky look on his face, and my girlfriend got really upset that I walked in. And I remember she ended up pulling me out of the classroom and saying to me, Bubba, what are you doing here? I'm just trying to get some extra credit. Okay, like, can you like leave me alone? Okay, I was just wondering if you want to like, you know, maybe go get dinner. No, Bubba, I'm busy. And she went back into the classroom as if she didn't care. At that moment, I was debating on breaking up with her. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, she was someone I still cared about and the hottest girl in my drama classroom. So I didn't really want to think much of it. I did text her when I got home as well, but she would still ignore me either way. And I realized that maybe talking to her wasn't the best thing to do. Until the next day. I remember I ended up basically walking down the hallway in the morning, and it was before any class started. And as I was walking down the hallway, I ended up seeing my girlfriend run up to me. She ran up to me saying, Bubba, can I talk to you for a second? Yeah, sure. What's going on, babe? Okay, well, just come with me real quick. I ended up going to like a secret like staircase that we had back in our high school, and no one would go into. Actually, fun fact, I used to do a lot of the Devil's Tango in that staircase, but that's a story for another time. But me and her, we ended up going to the secret staircase, and she ended up looking at me saying, Bubba, to be honest with you, we should break up. Why? Why would we break up? Well, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I kind of have feelings for someone else now. What? Who's the other guy? I don't want to say, but if I do, you promise not to say anything? I won't say anything, just who's the other dude? Well, it's our new teacher. What? Is what I said? At this moment, I got furious. I looked at her and said, you know how illegal this is? Generally, are you okay? Bubba, what is going on? Can't you just accept, like, I'm 18 anyway. Like, it's not like it's illegal. Yeah, but he's our teacher. Bubba, you just don't understand. You're just jealous. Like, you knew this was coming, didn't you? At this moment, I kind of just shook my head and just walked away. I didn't want to think too much of it. And honestly, I just didn't want to deal with her BS. Like, I was just really upset, guys. Like, you guys have no idea. And I remember the whole day while I was upset, I finally had to go into my drama class that I was planning on skipping, by the way, but I decided to show up. And instantly at that moment, I am not joking, everyone in the classroom knew what was going on, and everyone noticed how the teacher was basically acting like he was dating the student, my ex-girlfriend. It was insane, and everyone started to point it out, and it got to the point where I want to say like 2 days later, the teacher ended up getting fired and expelled from our school. Yeah, the teacher got expelled. I didn't even know that was possible, but hey, honestly, what this guy was doing was majorly weird. It's better to be single with a standard than losing yourself for approval. Now, if you guys don't know what this means, basically today's story does get really insane, and honestly, to this day, it blows my mind how this even ended up happening. But today's story will blow your mind, so let's just get straight into it. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba, and welcome back to another insane story. So this story takes place back when I was in high school. Honestly, I usually say this because everything happens in high school. Like, seriously, if you're in high school right now, comment down below, because you guys would know every day in high school is like an adventure. Unless you're one of those kids that sit in the corner, puts their head in the sand, and just focuses on doing work, which honestly, partially, I believe I should have done, but you know what? It is what it is. Anyways, going on, basically, I remember back when I was in high school, this was my grade 11 year, and I had a girlfriend. Funny enough, I had a girlfriend for like 2 months, and the reason it was so short is because, well, me and her didn't really ever work out. And by that, I mean, while we were dating, me and her, we just kept doing the Devil's Tango. We're not actually, you know, going on dates or doing anything. We mostly just liked each other because of our bodies, which honestly is gross, but at the same time, I mean, hey, what can I say? You know, she got nice cherries. Going on though, I remember basically, I really wanted to one time actually like take her on a date, like a proper date. But for some reason, she always like made up an excuse that she was busy and stuff. And she used to always pull the line saying, oh, like, honestly, like, I have like just a lot of stuff to do. Like, I'm sorry. Which I'm gonna be for real here. When girls say that all the time, especially if you're dating them, there's definitely something off. So later on, I remember basically me and her, we were having a conversation one time while we were heading to our new class. It was the start of a new semester, and basically me and her, we ended up taking the same French class so we can hang out with more with each other. Kind of cute, but at the same time, let's just say it became a lot of regret. Because I remember once we entered inside the classroom, basically me and her, we started sitting down next to each other. But one thing I noticed is that she kept getting distracted. And it wasn't distracted by me, which, you know, I wish it was, but she was more distracted by someone else. I remember I kept looking at her and kept asking her, hey, is everything all right? But basically every time the teacher would speak in front of the classroom, she would always, and I mean always, get distracted and just focus on him instead of me. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for being a good student, but getting to the point where you're almost being aroused by your teacher is kind of weird. And don't get me wrong, I've done the Devil's Tango with a teacher before, but honestly, that's a story for another time. Going on though, I remember basically every time me and her were having a conversation or anything, or for example, I mentioned to her, hey, like, do you want to skip this class and like go out and just hang out something? She would literally say, no, I really got to go to this class. It's very important. It's French, is what I told her. And then she said, well, I like the class, so you can go and skip without me, but I want to actually stay here. Okay, whatever, is what I said, and I ended up skipping class. I remember that day when I was skipping class though, I felt felt like something was off. Like, you know that gut feeling in your stomach where you know just something just doesn't feel right? That's exactly what was happening to me. So I remember right before class ended, I decided to sprint over to the French classroom that I was supposed to be in and basically see what was going on. I remember I literally looked through the window and I saw my girlfriend literally just staring at the French teacher and not even paying attention to anyone else. It became super weird, and it got to the point where I remember basically she ended up standing up after the bell rang when she was supposed to leave and walked up to the French teacher and started touching his shoulder and said, hey, like, I was wondering if you have like an after school help course that you can like help me out in. What is what I said? I found this super weird. So I remember afterwards I ended up walking inside the classroom, and I remember my girlfriend looks at me and says, oh, hey Baba, let's just leave. And then my French teacher looks super weird at me, and basically me and her, we left. I remember I looked at her and saying, why'd you ask him for a special help course at the end of class? And then she said, oh, because like I'm failing French. No, you're not, is what I said, because I knew she was not failing French. If there was any class she focused on the most this semester, was French class. So obviously something was up and she wasn't telling the truth. So I remember I looked at her again and I said, listen, if something's wrong, just tell me. But as the girl she was, she never wanted to hurt my feelings. So she said, oh, like nothing's wrong. Do you want to like go out for like sushi? Hey, she offered. So I remember me and her, we ended up going on a sushi date. I remember later that night when I went home, I was basically laying in bed thinking what was wrong with me. I was thinking that maybe like I was like doing something wrong in this relationship. And to be honest, as a helpless romantic, all I want to do is just be better in a relationship. So I remember I ended up sending a Snapchat to her saying, hey, like, do you want to like maybe come over to maybe see if we can like, you know, do the devil's tango to, you know, kind of bring back that connection that we usually had when we were doing the devil's tango. But then she ended up snapping me back saying, oh, sorry, I'm super busy with like homework. What homework is what I said. And then afterwards I realized that she was lying. She definitely was not doing homework. And don't say how I know this or, oh, I'm jumping to assumptions. Ladies, come on. It's pretty obvious when you guys are lying here. But as the nice guy I was back in high school, I gave her the benefit of the doubt, and I basically just thought that she was just probably just doing her homework, I guess. And I went to bed. The next morning, I remember my dad ended up waking me up super early for school and told me, hey, Bubba, you gotta go to school. You gotta go to school. I got work to do. So since he was going to work super early for some reason, I had to go with him to drop me off at school. So I ended up going to school at 7 in the morning. My class started at 8:30, and I ended up going to school almost an hour early. That's so dumb. Honestly, to this day, it really made me mad that I was at the school super early. So I remember I was just walking through the hallways doing my own thing until I saw my girlfriend already at the school. She was already at the school at her locker, and basically she just started running to French class, which is super weird because we would usually have French at the end of the school day, not before. So I remember I ended up kind of like following her and seeing what was going on, and I remember she ended up going inside the French class, and when I looked through the window, I see her walking up to my French teacher, and out of nowhere, and I mean out of nowhere, she literally ended up making out with my French teacher in the classroom when she thought no one was there. Honestly, I was surprised that my French teacher was even gonna make out with a 16-year-old, even though he was 27, but still, something was definitely off. I remember I really wanted to walk in there in the moment, but honestly, part of me did not have the courage to. I didn't have the courage to walk in there and confront them, or confront her in any way. So I remember I ended up developing a plan. At the moment when they were making out in the classroom in the beginning of the school day, I took a photo of both of them. I took a photo of them making out, and I knew one day this would come in handy. In the next following couple of weeks, I remember this girl kept asking me questions, and basically my girlfriend tried to be a girlfriend because she realized that I was drifting away from her. But she didn't seem like she really cared as much as I thought she would. You know, the more I drifted away, the more she would ask me what's going on, but at the same time, she just kept not caring, I guess. And I knew the reason for this was because she was going on dates with my French teacher. And I remember one time literally in French class, she was literally sitting in front of the classroom, not sitting beside me anymore, and just staring at my French teacher with her glazing eyes at him. It was super weird and super awkward, and I found it super uncomfortable. But what I decided to do was figure out when would be the best moment to expose this photo. And that moment came when my teacher literally said, all right, class, we're going to be doing a presentation. You guys will be making this on PowerPoint. But when he said PowerPoint presentation, you already know what was about to go down. At that moment, I remember I basically ended up jumping on my laptop and writing down this presentation. I was basically doing the whole presentation, but at the very end of it, I remember I slapped on the photo and I slapped on, I'm breaking up with you, and you know, just a bunch of bad stuff that I really shouldn't say on YouTube. I'm gonna be honest here. YouTube, don't demonetize me. And I remember 2 days later, out of the blue, one night before the day of the presentations happened, the girl ended up messaging me. My girlfriend at the time, I should say. And she literally said, hey, Bubba, listen, I don't think we're gonna work out. Like, it's not you, it's me. And like, honestly, like, I just don't think I'm ready for a relationship. At this moment, I knew this girl was absolute BS, bro. Like, no cap, bro. This girl was absolutely weird, bro. You guys have no idea how mad I am at her to this day. Like, it's disgusting. So I remember basically I ended up just texting her saying, I understand. It's definitely something that you got to fix through, and I understand if you're not ready for a relationship. I kept my cool, ladies and gentlemen, because I knew that I was going to flame in the next day, basically. So I remember the next day came along, and basically French class was at the end of school day. So I remember I was hyping myself up the entire school day, basically getting ready to do this. And when my teacher in French class said, okay, Bubba, you're up next, I ended up going in front of the classroom. I looked at her straight in the eye. I did my presentation, and afterwards I said, oh wait, my presentation isn't over. I ended up looking at my ex-girlfriend and said, by the way, did you guys know that most French teachers are pedophiles? For example, we have Mr. and actually sleeping with a student literally in this classroom. So yeah, be safe, children. At that moment, there was a little photo of them on the screen on the PowerPoint, and everyone in the classroom was freaking out saying, oh. And I remember at that moment, the principal actually ended up walking in and saying, Bubba, my office now. And basically I had to explain to the principal everything that happened, and one thing led to another. My French teacher got expelled, and my ex-girlfriend ended up hating me even more, but at the same time, she ended up getting flamed throughout the entire school year, to the point where she actually ended up switching schools. Anyways, guys, that's basically it for today's story. Make sure you guys do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and like I always say, just fall for more embarrassing stories. Like, seriously, just do it. Peace out, guys.